Hey everybody, it's Marty, the JavaScript party. Oh man, my camera's doing that thing again. It's such a bummer. I don't know why that happens. It would be really interesting to understand that. It does just go away on its own after a bit. But it's just me today. Rhett is, so my wife and my son, my youngest son, are out doing a small construction project out in the living room, and Rhett is enjoying watching that. So she chose to stay out in the living room to watch that as opposed to come and do the show with me. I guess that is probably a lot more interesting, watching those social dynamics play out and watching the actual like construction. She loves to sit in her cage and just organize things. She'll sit for hours and hours and hours organizing things. It's just one of her things to do. So basically, what I'm trying to do, and I don't know exactly how to do it, is, but I'm trying to do like a basically I want the these. I'm gonna turn this camera off. I think the sort of that motion is a bit distracting. Um, but basically, what I want is for all of these objects, these DOM objects, not the canvases, but the actual um, outer animation objects to sort of lay out on their own and to figure out where they want. And there's a couple modes. There's one mode that I want where, like, if you just add one, it just sort of goes, it figures out where the best place to add it is, and just pushes it. And if you delete one, it just sort of figures out the best way to lay out those. But then, if you have manually moved one, it should probably just stay wherever you manually moved it. And at this point, we don't really have the concept of sizes. Like, I think every one of these uh, components are the exact same size. I can't remember. It's either 250 or 200. So they're all 200. So they all just sort of need a layout, and they should just sort of align based on their position. Which, like with CSS Flex, I could get that, but I also want to be able to be like, okay, this guy, when I move him, he stays there. And then right now, the concept is these are all the same width and height. I do want to be able to change their widths and heights and zoom levels and all kinds of stuff. I want to be able to do all kinds of neat things. So, and I want to be able to try to put my mind to solving all those different sort of issues that just naturally arise as part of this endeavor. Um, but that is where I'm at now. And so basically, yesterday's video, my brain was not working well yesterday. I don't know why, but last night I slept. I think I went to bed around 9:30 p.m. and I did not wake up till almost 8, which is unheard of for me. Normally, I only sleep about 6.5 hours, and then I'll wake up. Just so if I go to bed at 9:30, I'll wake up, you know, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. If I go to bed at 10:30, I'll wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, and then that's just sort of how things have always been for me. But last night guess I needed a lot of sleep, and my brain does feel like it's functioning better. We will find out because we'll see how things work out. So I was thinking, couldn't remember how the animations work for these things, but basically every one of them just sort of gets registered with ThreeJS and ran. But I do think that I'm going to want to animate the way these, like, so let's say you grab this and you moved it. I probably, at first it'll just snap into place, but I would probably rather them sort of float to where they belong. Um, and I think that might be a more pleasant experience. And then, like, if I make this bigger, I would like these to just sort of all sort of float into their new area. And I think that just poses some fun and interesting problems that would be cool to get to experience in a non-stressful, relaxed way. But with that said, I think that all of this sort of request animation frame and these sorts of things all belong in the animation service. And it's kind of weird because I want to call these frames, but they're not. Um, So I guess what it would be like a visualization layout. So maybe we'll go in here and I mean, I'm truly spitballing here. And at the back of my head is like, okay, how am I going to frickin' um, how am I going to um, unit test this thing, So um, visualizations layout. So basically, I think that's what I want it to be called. And I don't know. I don't know how I want to communicate what the existing situation is. Like, what is the existing array? And, how do I get access to the actual underlying DOM pieces so that I can move them around, set their width and height? I don't have the vaguest idea. I'm pretty confident I don't want to return anything from this. And I guess the first step will just be to get this thing. And one thing I do know that is coming is there's going to be a clock in here that kind of keeps track of all times and stuff like that. So so I can sync everything up, and this thing will probably want to sort of lock into that too, just to make everything feel a little bit more like natural, I guess would be the thing. So I'm just going to say visualization layout. And so like I really don't know. I don't know how this is all going to play out. And for now, I'm going to kind of have like an MVC, model view controller sort of mindset, where this animation service function is kind of like a controller, and I guess whatever these are will be kind of like the model. So I do have renderer IDs. So maybe I want to pass it an array of renderer IDs, and then it knows based on the renderer ID. Now I don't think my renderers, like I had created an object or an interface for that would describe these things. I can't remember what's in there. We should probably go look. So I do have so I like to do this. Okay, so I have app, and then inside of app, I guess I have interfaces, and inside of interfaces, I have this animation. I don't know, visualization. Yeah, this guy right here. So I have a width, a height, and a renderer. I probably needed a left and a top. And so basically we'll know the width, the height, and the actual renderer from there. Probably should be renderer ID, not renderer. Let's see what happens if I change this to ID. Number, change this to ID. I don't think I'm actually using this anywhere. And let's just see what breaks number. So as you can see, I'm just flailing around right now. I'm just doing stuff that seem like the right thing to do. I don't have a plan at this moment, which means I don't really have an architecture, which means like I'm just kind of making it up as I go. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because sometimes you don't know what you're doing. I mean, you don't always know what you're doing. It would be nice if you always knew what you're doing, but the reality is you don't always know what you're doing. And sometimes you just kind of have to make it up as you go, and sometimes you don't. And you have to be truthful with yourself. If you're just making stuff up, then that's good. I just want to figure out, okay, so I thought I was trying to put semicolons in between these sorts of things, but maybe not. Let's go. I know the most mature thing we have are like these models and mesh. Yeah, so I'm putting semicolons. So let's go ahead and try to slowly, I'm defining a culture for myself. And in my culture that I've defined, we put semicolons here. It's totally optional. which is the reason, in my opinion, JavaScript has been able to sort of really dominate or do really well, really survive under a lot of different changes. It's because of that. But so since I'm not using these things anywhere anyways now, um, I'm going to go ahead and add these in since there's no cost involved. So basically every visualization will have a renderer ID, a top, a width, and a height. Now, I don't know how, like, it probably should also have an optional element that is the, so again, I am literally just spitballing right now. So if we go to our component, we go to our app component, we are creating these app vizzes. So we go into an app viz. It's in components, visualization, and it has the view child, which is the element ref. If we go look in here, this whole div is the view child. So this viz, let's see. So inside of here, okay, so inside of here we do not have we are not setting the width and height of things inside of here. So let's go back up to the app. What I'm trying to figure out is what piece do I want to move around? And this app viz is the piece. So probably what I'm going to want is, I'm trying to figure out how I can get to this piece here so I can set its, so I can programmatically set its position. And I don't know, like, so there's view children, right? So I've never really gotten to play around. Let me see if I can turn this on now. Nope. So I've never really got to play around with like view child versus view children. But it seems like that's what I would want is the view children, whatever that object is, so then I can try to set the width and height. And, so this leads me to an interesting question that I've always been curious about. So in Angular, is the difference between a view child and view children? And now I'm always assumed that at view children would give you access to, yeah, see that, so that is what, right? Decorators used to get access to child components. Directors are DOM elements from a parent component. The key difference between those shows how they handle multiple matching elements. So view child will only select the first matching element. Ah, okay. So like if we look in our viz component, we do a view child and it's on viz. And in here, I think we had the hash viz. So this is our reference element. But view, so that gives us the one, and that's fine, and that's all we need here. But what I want is all of them. Selects all matching child elements or components. It returns a query list, which is an iterable collection used when you need to interact with multiple children, which sounds exactly like what we need. So like in this example, there's two of them, and they're both called paragraph. And then we say view children paragraph, and that's going to give us a query list. So maybe one of the complex things will be, so we're going to need somehow, and I don't know how to do this. I don't have the vaguest idea how I'm going to do this, but we're going to need in here in our app component, we're going to need view children of our apps. So basically something like, and of course I already used the name viz, so at visualization. So that's our visualization, right? Now you have to be careful with these names, because if you name something in a real, that's the construction my kids are doing. But my wife and youngest are doing. Oh no, I think someone visited. Anyways, we have a visitor outside. But anyways, the visualization. Sometimes you can use a name that is that ends up being a name that maybe they use in Angular or something. I don't know. I've just had experiences where I named something and then stuff wouldn't work, and then I changed the name and suddenly it all started working. So visualization is such a common word. Maybe I don't want to use it. Visualization item. Oh, you have to camel case these. Visualization item is the name of this thing. So basically we'll get the children, and that's the whole idea. And then we'll be able to set the left, right, height, and width, and all that kind of stuff from this. So that is going to be that. And so we are way off target, because the only thing I really wanted to accomplish today, I wanted to make sure I accomplish today, is getting a function that just runs over and over again inside of the visualization. But the thought process has moved me into these directions, into saying, oh, okay, I need to add things and all that. So, there's nothing wrong. I mean, this isn't that long of a video. It's only 17 minutes long. But let's go back to our animation service. I want to call this visualization layout over and over again, and I do want it to get the IDs. Now, one of the things that's really going to be that's probably not the right name. I'll probably change that. But basically, it's going to take these IDs and then and let's go ahead and give it a default if it doesn't have one. So basically, this is just going to run over and over and over again, and it's going to do something to try to figure out, do I need to update these visualizations? And I don't know how that's going to work. We're literally just making this up as I go, because I've never done this before. And even if I had done it, I probably wouldn't remember, so I'd have to make it up. This would be something, if I did it 50 or 100 times, I would be like, oh, I know exactly how to do this, but I don't know. So this is where the creativity comes in. So now what I want to do is, but I do know that one of my biggest challenges is going to end up being scoping. So let's try this instead of. Okay, so basically this visualization, I think what I want to do is something along the lines of this, and I just want to call it. Let's see, we should have scoping to our animation service. And I'm going to pass in render IDs. So basically, I'm just going to pass in my IDs. and then I'm going to call myself again. And I'm going to kick it off here, and I do not need these there. All right, so what I'm hoping to happen is that I can get my visualization, that it will run itself. And obviously hello is not the right word, but now let's come in here, inspect, and hope that there's a bunch of stuff in the console. Yeah. So yeah, so this is running over and over again. And then let's see what our wrong one. Let's see what we get in our visualization IDs. And I guess, you know what? Yeah, I think that it should have to provide it. Now that I've seen that side. And I think visualization IDs does make sense as the name. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we get a visualization ID and we get that. So basically, the next step, I think, okay, so while we're here, I'm trying to do stuff that I just know is not going to end up becoming a rabbit hole. Let's see. We want to call this something where it makes sense. So layout. What is a word for layout loop? Loop. So it indicates that, hey, this runs out over and over again. Layout loop. So nothing breaks. I think that name makes sense. It doesn't feel right, right? It definitely has a smell to it, but I can't quite make it out. So I would definitely, if I saw something like this in a PR, if I was doing a PR and saw something like this, I would, if I was, the reviewer, I would definitely take a good hard look at this. This is very risky. But if I didn't have a, now that I'm coding it, I'm being really like treading very lightly, because this really does have a strong chance of just breaking everything. I think I do want to put a warning inside of, what do I have going on here? I never did even save that, so that might have broke all kinds of stuff. Okay, so I do want to put a warning in here. This function runs around 60 times per section. Avoid doing any calculations in this function. Now, if I do need to do some sort of calculation, then the idea is that maybe I would have like maybe a set timeout, or maybe something with RxJS that runs maybe 10 times a second, or 100 times a second, or whatever, but that calculation would happen there, with a lot of thought as to, hey, how often does this really need to happen? Does it need to happen every 60th of a second? Can it happen 10 times a second? And be able to avoid basically, using massive amounts of memory. And it is so hard to predict exactly what using a lot of memory is going to do, because the reason is because it's so dependent on like how many processors your computer has, and That is probably like the biggest thing that can really affect how something like this works. But it's tough because you can be like, oh man, it works perfectly on my machine, but then we go take it to some other machine that maybe has just one big heavy processor, just a single massive processor, and they'd be like, man, it just brings my, like, whenever I do this and I have Word on and I have some other program that I use and I'm playing a video, this whole thing just comes to a screeching halt. And it could just not even be this project. Like, this project might be doing fine, but they have some other memory intensive thing. But then if they have like four processors, then those memory intensive things just sort of end up on other processors, and then this can run in its own processor. But then if you do a lot of calculations and you have, like, let's say you had a 20 processor, 20 tiny processors, then this thing could, this thing's only operating on one of those little processors, and it may not be, you might try to make it do too much. So anyways, anytime you're doing this sort of layout, or anytime you're doing these sorts of looping sort of things, you want to do them in some sort of non-blocking way. Um, and then B, you want to really put a lot of thought into exactly how much work you're going to put on that. So there's that. So anyway, so this is where it's going to be done. Just, I guess, as a fun thing, we could do like, I believe this guy has access to the renderer service. Dot get renderer by ID, and then we can loop over our visualization IDs each. So none of this, I don't think so then this is where you also end up with issues. If we do calculations in the get renderer by ID function, then what happens is you end up doing it in here. So like, the get render ID function has to be very, like, if you suddenly, some developer that's just working in isolation in their own silo decides, oh, you know what, I can do some quick calculation inside of get renderer by ID, then that can cause problems. So maybe it makes sense, if you're working in a large group, to have two get renderers by ID, one that is for animations with like a big thing, hey, if you're gonna run this function a bunch of times, don't use this one because all it does is check memory. But if you're gonna run it some other time, then use this one because it does these other calculations and does these other things, right? Like, and that's probably why it makes a lot of sense. Like, the get renderer by ID should probably only get renderers by ID. That's all it should do. It shouldn't do any other side effect code. And I guess this is probably the biggest reason why. Because other developers, it might matter. Those side effects may make a huge difference in the way they would make decisions on writing code. But anyways, so let's see if that even works, and then let's console log. I believe we'll get a renderer, right? Const an st renderer equals, and this is of type st renderer, and that is not what it is. Oh, and that's because I'm using not the st renderer service. I'm using the renderer service, and it doesn't. So it doesn't. I'm wondering if this was the one where I couldn't, where it would break in runtime, because I really don't want the 3 renderer. I want the ST renderer. But if I remember correctly, I couldn't use it because there was like some kind of cyclic error. Let's just try it. There we go. And then if I, yeah. Yep, I have. Yeah, that's right. All rules are broken. And this, I think, all worked. It compiles. Oh. Because the last thing I want is actually an ST renderer. I want. But this may be a good reason to create. Yep, and then it breaks. Because it says there's this circular dependency in the animation service, which I don't really understand what's going on there, but that's kind of a bummer. So what we need is like an ST. I don't know. So yeah, we've run into a pretty good problem here, and that's that I don't have a good way to get the actual visualization objects, the children, from anything. I was kind of hoping I could just toss it on the ST renderers, but we can't. So I think what I have to do um, is create like a whole freaking um, see how we have this 3 and we like a whole system visualization. Oh, that's our interfaces. So in our services, I think I'm going to have ST visualizations that has a lookup for the IDs that it can, and it has the actual children with the DOM items in them that I can update. So I don't think that there's a 3 equivalent, right? 3 has cameras and meshes and renders and scenes and geometries, but it doesn't have um, our renderers. Our visualizations. So I guess it should be like kind of like the way I did animations here. It should be like visualizations, and basically and it's probably basically going to be almost exactly like this guy or any of the other ones, where it basically has a a dictionary that's a dictionary of these things, and you can add them and delete them. They probably all have their own IDs and all that other stuff. So I got to build out that whole architecture just so I can keep track of these things and be able to easily access them and determine if they need to be modified in any way and stuff like that. Oh, another thing that I wanted to add in visualizations. Jesus. Manual placement. And that's a Boolean. And I'll never friggin' remember what that means. So let me put a comment for myself. True means you placed it specifically. Placed it. So the flow is sort of a concept in CSS. If you have certain CSS layouts, it's part of a flow where it's like gets put either in order with everything else, and then there's some things that are not in the flow. Now, I do not have anything in the flow. Everything is absolutely positioned. So this isn't the CSS thing. That's just for me um, to understand. And I probably would not put that like if other developers, because it does imply that there's a CSS component. Say no CSS. CSS. Um, So, anyways, that is that. I hope everyone is having a great Sunday. I know so far I'm having an amazing day. It's just absolutely beautiful outside. Um, we went to the park. It was absolutely beautiful there. It actually feels a little bit hot, which is one of the first times in this whole year that I've actually felt hot outside, which is, good for you, I think. But, anyways, it is 35 minutes. A good time to peace out. Bye.